What up, everybody? It's your boy Jimmy Guapo, and welcome to the very first installment of the world famous, the Magnifico Sophomore Show. Yeah, so with this being my very first sophomore show that I'm willing to put on television, in this case YouTube, um, I wanted to review something that was made for the very first time or shown for the very first time last night, which is Winning Time, the great television show detailing the exploits and the pretty much the rise of the Lakers 1980s basketball dynasty. We'll get into that, and it's going to be some spoilers if you're the type that you're like, I don't want to hear about this show until I go watch it. Totally understandable. Go watch it, come back, watch this video, click, comment, and subscribe on this video so I can make some money in my pocket. So, yeah, man. So what I'm gonna try to do with this show that I'm making for you guys is to just pretty much talk about stuff. You know, I run my mouth all the time about stuff I probably don't know 100% about, but that doesn't mean I don't have an opinion, and it doesn't mean that you shouldn't listen to it. But no, I'm big on feedback, man. Like if we don't have to necessarily go in the right or wrong, but maybe you could show me a different perspective that I wasn't seeing, and vice versa. I think in the world, not to get all too Pollyanna with it, but that's why we're here. Like shared human experiences, all that type of stuff. So, if it's gonna look weird that I'm looking into the camera, I'm not looking dead center into your soul, is because my phone, like the camera's over there, and I gotta look over here, so. I'm doing my best, focus on the monkey, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, this is pretty much gonna be chill, free form. I'm gonna try to put some music in it and lay a music bed down and stuff like that, get graphics. But really, I wanted to get to the main point of my show, which is content. And content is my pretty much opinion and discussion on anything. Trying to have guests some kind of way. I'm not sure how. If they're not sitting right beside me, I'll have to figure that out. Most of my guests I'd have are out of state. So, but yeah, man, I'd like to thank y'all for joining me on this show. I used to have a show called The South Side Show in Atlanta, a little small time radio show. And it, didn't really take off. I wasn't really looking for it to take off. Just did it for experience. So, I call this the Sophomore Show because it's pretty much my second real attempt at making something cool and putting it on YouTube. So there you go. I'm gonna try not to get demonetized this episode. I'm gonna try not to curse too early. We'll save that for the end. But yeah, and here, let me see if I can scooch up just a little bit. There we go. Okay. So, for the uninitiated, for those of you who have been living under a rock or maybe was born, maybe 10 years ago, Winning Time details the 1980s Los Angeles Lakers, the Showtime Lakers as they're usually referred to. Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Michael Cooper, Byron Scott, maybe a little bit, but I think he was more so towards the latter of where this episode is going. Who else? Norm Nixon, obviously, Kurt Rambis, Pat Riley, pretty much the Los Angeles Lakers as we've come to know them. What would really be cool is if somebody did something not only on the Chicago Bulls, because I'm a Bulls fan, if they did something like this, but if they did something on the Shaq and Kobe Lakers of 2000, because I would think that would get really interesting. Like if they took, what's that? It's not The Last Dance, but whatever book that was Phil wrote, and where he like kind of slammed Kobe about not being coachable or whatever. If somebody took that and made that into a TV show like they did this with Jeff Pearlman's Showtime book, then I would be all for it. But I don't have any money. I'm making videos on YouTube, so what the hell? But no, first of all, the Lakers period. They are a franchise. They are a model franchise in the NBA. Excuse me. I know everybody clowns the Lakers now and LeBron and Westbrook and Anthony Davis, but the reason why two of those three are there is because they know like what the Lakers are, like what the Lakers mean to the NBA, how big it is to not only play in LA for the Lakers, but for your professional career, in basketball, but also the business side aspect. You got Hollywood, music people out there, all that good stuff. So yeah, I'm sure LeBron and Anthony Davis, they saw Shaq and Kobe play for the Lakers, and they probably also saw Magic and Kareem play for the Lakers, and that's just how I go. Like, I've always been of the opinion that the NBA is better when the Lakers are good. Either you root against them or you root for them, but everybody has an opinion on the Lakers. So me personally, I was born in California, like right around the time this show was made, about 5 years after. Well, not when the show was made, but when the events took place. So, I've always had, respect and love for the Lakers, especially Magic Johnson. 6'9" point guard who could see the floor and could pass like this and all of that. Like, what's not to love? We'll get into what happened and why they didn't, how Magic ended up on the Lakers, which is kind of a crazy story. And all of this happens in this first episode. So, but yeah. So what I didn't know was that there's kind of this backfighting between, or not even backfighting, but Adam McKay, the man who directed or kind of created this, and Will Ferrell, the actor who you all probably know about. They kind of fell out because Will Ferrell was aiming for the Dr. Jerry Buss role, which went to his Talladega Nights cohort, John C. Reilly. And apparently Adam McKay told John that he got the part, but he didn't tell Will Ferrell that he was giving the part to him. So, this, that, and the third, all of this got, mixed up. And now apparently Adam McKay and Will Ferrell aren't cool anymore, or they're not as cool as they used to be, which is kind of sad because they made great films, like hilarious films. The Other Guys was hilarious. Talladega Nights was hilarious. I don't know if they did. I don't know if Adam McKay did Old School. I can't really remember. But anyway, so yeah, like the show, and spoiler alert, I said that before, but just so everybody knows. But the show kind of starts off as Dr. Jerry Buss. He's kind of like talking to a chick that he has in the bed who, probably goes to like USC or UCLA or something like that. But no, he's in the bed talking to her, and he's like kind of talking to her and to us, the audience. And he's like, yeah, I think basketball should be about sex, or not be about, Lord, that'd be different. It should be like sex, like how exciting it is and how rhythmic and all that kind of stuff. And she's like, yeah, she's in the bed sleep. So she's like, I got chemistry at like 3. So he's like, yeah, whatever. But anyway, it kind of shows you like the wild side of the Los Angeles Lakers, and only in the first episode. Like, Magic and Dr. Jerry Buss end up meeting in this episode. So if they go where, folklore and history has said about the Lakers at that time, it's going to be pretty interesting. I don't really see too many people from either the Lakers organization then or now kind of like, hey, kind of putting their arms around this. So I don't know if it's one of those things where it's not sugar-coated enough or anything like that. But also, Jeff Pearlman, the man who wrote the book Showtime, he doesn't pull any punches. Like, I remember seeing him on the Jim Rome show, and he would say stuff where I'll be like, damn, like, I hope he knows karate. Because and it's not like he says it or is making stuff up. Like, he just says stuff out of, truth. He's an investigative reporter. So he wrote a book about the Mets where they had Darryl Strawberry and Doc Gooden. And if I'm not a huge baseball fan, but if just like a piece of those two guys' history and the Mets history in that time period, like, they were some wild dudes then. He did a book on the Dallas Cowboys, how they got down and they were wild. When the Cowboys were the Cowboys, like the 90s Cowboys. I think it was the 90s Cowboys. Because I remember reading how Super Bowl 30, the coach for the Cowboys had girls come through or whatever. It's just a wild read, but it's like he's one of those guys where you read the book and people say truth is stranger than fiction. Like, yeah, you don't want Jeff Pearlman writing a book about you if you don't want your stuff to get out, because it does come out. He did a book about the late great Walter Payton, and he didn't pull any punches in that book either. So he showed the good and the bad with him. And he did it with the Lakers too. Like, he, stuff that we kind of knew about but didn't really know, but he investigated and wrote a book about, and it was a bestseller. So Obviously, if he was lying well, but I don't, I think he was very truthful and very credible as to what he was reporting. But the Lakers of the 80s, they were the Lakers of the 80s and the NBA pretty much going into the 80s, they were a sinking ship. They had an image problem, which if you if you're of a certain age and you're a black person and people start speaking about that type of stuff with sports, like, what image problem means, pretty much, too urban or ethnic or something like that. So pretty much, and I think Adam McKay does a great job showing how people use coded language, sometimes to this day, but mainly back then. I mean, like there was a running joke on, like, in the NFL, like, you knew if a head coach was black if they're like, oh yeah, he's such a class guy. He just comes from great stock, great people. Like, whenever somebody starts talking about a head coach in that capacity in NFL, they're, at least mixed at the very least. So it's just one of them things. But not to get too far off on a tangent, but yeah, like Adam McKay kind of does this thing to where he's like, yeah, they really mean white people when these words are being said, and they really mean black people when these words are being said. So, I think he does a great job. He had super duper creepy Donald Sterling in there, who comes off as much of a creep in the TV show as he did in real life. And you just watch stuff on SportsCenter, you could tell he's a creep then, like all the stuff he did, and he is very racist. But in the show, they do a very, very good job of like showing how much of a creep show this guy is, and like just how you wouldn't want to be around him. And they kind of slam Donald Trump at the same time, which is I'm all for. So it is what it is. Yeah, it starts off like Dr. Jerry. First of all, I think John C. Reilly does. He's just outstanding as Dr. Jerry Buss. I didn't know him personally, but from seeing like video clips of him and hearing how people talk about him, like it seems kind of spot on. Like, he seems very spot on. It seems like the role he was born to play, because John C. Reilly, if you ever saw him in any TV show or movie, he's usually a silly person, or he's in silly TV shows, or he's in Talladega Nights. He was a funny dude, and he wasn't in Other Guys, but he was in Step Brothers, hilarious. He's in Guardians of the Galaxy. He was great in that, but he also shows like, yeah, he's a funny, silly guy, but he has, depth to him where he could like portray somebody he could portray a real person. He's not just a caricature. And I think he does an outstanding job doing that. He's a rich dude, but he doesn't come out, like, he doesn't act like a rich dude. Like, and it's not phony where he's like a rich dude and he's like, hey, I'm one of the fellas, like that Steve Buscemi meme. Like, he's like, hey, what's up, fellow kids? Like, and he's not a kid. Like, Dr. Jerry Buss in this show comes off as being very genuine, and I can appreciate that. Also, who comes off as being true to form and who I used to hear about not being a nice person at all in the workplace or otherwise is Jack Kit Cook, the owner of the the owner of the Los Angeles Lakers before Dr. Jerry Buss buys them. I remember reading stories about how, and like I said, I didn't read Jeff's book, but I remember hearing stories and reading stories about how he was just a horrible person in the workplace to work for. Double that if you were a woman, triple that if you were black, probably, and quadruple that if you were a black woman. Good Lord. He probably tried to shoot you the first day. But, he was just not a nice dude at all. Like, just horrible. Horrible to women, horrible to, and it's not like this is Mad Men, where it took place in the 50s and 60s, before, most people didn't have rights, unless you was like a white dude. This took place in pretty much the 80s, like going into the 80s, but Jack Kent Cook, he was of the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and you could tell how he was very, what's the word? Like, he didn't appreciate magic in the show anyway. He didn't appreciate how magic was like, he wasn't a shrinking violet. Like, Magic Johnson has never been the type to be like, I don't know, like, he's not, like, when I say the term in your face, I don't really mean it like, yeah, in your face. He's more like, he's just like boom. He's just an explosion. He's an outward personality. And it makes sense. I mean, the man's name is Magic Johnson, so you can't be shy with a name like that playing basketball. But anyway, I think they do a great job showing how like Cook was very resentful. Just Magic, far be it for me to like cast dispersions on people, but I'm sure like if getting down to brass tacks, this young 19-year-old black athlete from Michigan, coming up there with his dad, who's a garbage man, Jack could probably look down on him. Like he wouldn't be taking that meeting if Magic wasn't a outstanding basketball player. So it goes from Magic being a 19-year-old kid. They're at dinner, Dr. Jerry Buss, Jack Kid Cook, Magic, and his dad. Magic, they bring out the food and it's like some super duper rich fancy food like fish, and I like fish, but it did not look appetizing, and they made a good job of making it not look appetizing. But a Magic one was a cheeseburger, and Dr. Jerry Buss being like a colloquial, round the way type dude, more so than Jack Kent Cook, uppity ass. He was more so like, hey, look, cheeseburger for me. Let's get Mr. Johnson cheeseburger, Magic. And like Magic's dad didn't want it because Magic's dad, man, like he's like pretty much a lot of black people's dads. Like he was a black person. I grew up during the civil rights era, I'm sure before that, but I think there was this great back and forth between after Magic goes from the meeting. Well, first of all, let's just set it up like this. Magic is up here being himself, and it gets to the point where Magic is like, look, man, I know we all over here laughing and joking, but I'm worth about 600,000, like 600 bands a year. And which is like, like LeBron uses 600 bands to put gas in his car, especially I'm sure now. So it's just crazy. Like, and then hearing Jack Kent Cook flip out about, oh, you want $600,000 where, Kareem, he was, and he like talk shit about Kareem. And I'm sure if he didn't like Magic, I'm sure he didn't like Kareem. But, it was one of the things where he, Cook was like, yeah, we have Lou Alcindor on our team. Now, this is way after Lou Alcindor changed his name to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Like, this is way after UCLA. So, and Magic rightly is like, oh, you mean Kareem? And, white guy wanting to, be above people and control everybody. Not all white guys are like this, but this particular rich white man was back then. I don't know, I'm sure he's passed on now, but he was looking at this man like, who are you to be speaking up to me like that? Like, I own the Lakers. But if you heard how the man talked about his ex-wife, granted, it's his ex-wife. Not everybody gets along with their ex's wives or husbands, but the man he's just a foul person. And I think this show does a great job in showing that. But yeah, Cook was turned off by Magic. And Magic, wanted to be himself. Dr. Jerry Buss loved Magic. Like, and they went out to get a burger at, some local burger joint. And yeah, it was just one of the things where they showed pretty much how the whole thing got started. Dr. Jerry, speaking of ex-wives, Dr. Jerry had to borrow like $2 million from his ex-wife, which I'm sure was not an easy conversation. Like, and they made it look somewhat easy on the show, but I'm sure that was a tough one. But hey, look, it all worked out. When you gamble on yourself, a lot of times it works out. So, I think it's great they had. It's just funny, me seeing this whole show is kind of like an Easter egg for an NBA fan. But you see like Jeannie Buss when she's like, I don't know, 15. No, I think she's in college. Yeah, you see her when she's like, hey, Dad, I want to come work for you, and she knows her stuff. Like, Dr. Jerry's like, okay, so who should I draft, Larry Bird or Magic? And she's like, trick question. And she was right, because the Celtics had Larry Bird's rights like while he was in college, which was crazy. But yeah, and so she was like, no, you should get Magic Johnson. You should draft him. what's funny to me is they showed the coin flip between and I have forgotten this, but Chicago and LA, they had a coin flip to see who would get the number 1 draft pick. Magic ends up going to the Lakers, obviously, but as a Bulls fan, I'm looking like, damn, like we would have passed on Magic. Like, I just had this feeling like we would have passed on Magic Johnson. We was damn near gonna pass on Michael Jordan, except Portland and who was that? Houston. Well, Houston got Kareem. Not Kareem. Hakeem. Sorry, Hakeem. Yeah, Houston got Hakeem, but Portland did us a huge favor. Oh my God, a huge favor by drafting Sam Bowie, because back then everybody wanted a big man, and Sam Bowie went to Kentucky and all of that good stuff, and everybody thought he was gonna be the next big thing, and he was he started his own tradition. How like Magic kind of kicked off the Lakers as we know them in the modern age. Sam Bowie started off his tradition of Portland athletes who play for the Blazers. Well, no, he continued in the tradition because Bill Walton got hurt, but Sam Bowie got hurt, and then like after that, Greg Oden, Brandon Roy, all of these guys that got drafted by the Blazers that got hurt. I'm gonna knock on wood for my man Dame Dollar because I don't want nothing to happen to him, So, yeah, but as a NBA fan with a NBA team, I'm looking at that like, yeah, we would have fucked that up. We would have fucked up that draft. What's funny is just seeing all these people that you see. Like, I'm used to seeing David Stern as like this old, white-haired guy who's just, the commissioner of the league. And in this, I mean, he was a young boy. He was Larry O'Brien, the man who the NBA trophy's named after. For those who didn't know, he was his young boy. He was his like assistant or whatever. So, but I think that was cool. I like seeing that. I like seeing like how David Stern got his start. They got Adrian Brody playing Pat Riley in a couple episodes later, and he's like this, rando. I think it makes sense because Eric Spoelstra, who coaches the Heat, he kind of started off how Pat Riley started off for the Lakers organization. Like, he was like a video equipment guy and, liaison to whatever. So I think he saw a little bit of himself in Spo when he brought him along, and he saw how hard Spo worked, and he was like, yeah, you want to coach, 3 All-Stars to a championship? Yeah, come on. So, but yeah, man, it's I can't even, it's so hard to break down like how enjoyable the show is. Quincy Isaiah, the gentleman that plays Magic Johnson, does an excellent job playing Magic Johnson. He should play Magic Johnson in whatever biopic ever comes out about Magic Johnson because he was just so on point with it. Like, they showed Magic at his home in Lansing, Michigan, and first of all, I love how they were true to fact about his mom's. I remember reading this where his mom didn't like him being called Magic because she thought that was blasphemous. She thought, Magic was not Magic Johnson, but magic as a concept was evil because it was like the devil's work or whatever. And so they like, it was this part where I think somebody was like, hey man, they calling you like they were all in the house, and like one of his brothers like, hey, they Magic or whatever. And she's like, don't call him Magic. His name is Irvin. You call him Irvin in this house because, she thought that magic was, blasphemous or whatever, or evil. And, she was a very pious woman. She was a Seventh-day Adventist. And his father was a garbage man. Like, busted his ass. Like, that type of stuff, it makes me think about my own dad. And, not to get too, too overly emotional with it, but yeah. And I don't have children, but and Magic's dad says this in the show, like, never in a million years would I have thought that you would be, like, we would be right here in this position with you, maybe going to the Lakers. He's I want you to be a doctor, a judge, but hey, man, like, look at what you did. So I just think it's awesome to see how they were able to show how Magic's dad, saw him, and, he was his rock. Like, not to get too into it, but he was his rock, man. And there's a scene where Magic gets clowned by Norm Nixon at this party that just so happens to have a basketball court, which is wild. But it's LA, so, they probably got a tons of stuff out there. But my man Norm Nixon, who, like, first of all, I didn't even know this. Norm Nixon's son plays him in this TV show, and his son has been an actor for a long time. So I think that's cool. Like, I liked it when O'Shea Jackson Jr. played his dad in the movie. And I just think that's awesome, man. Because first of all, I mean, the man is a spitting image of, or they're both spitting image of their father. So, yeah, I think that's pretty cool. But Norm Nixon with like the biggest flex I've seen in a movie in a very long time. Like, this man, like, he's like, I'm gonna come out here hooping his. I think he had on like a fox mink, and he was like, all right, let me take this fox off real quick and get down to business. So I thought that was dope, man. Like, Norm Nixon was the point guard who Magic replaced and became, how they started the Showtime Dynasty with. Norm Nixon is, for those of you who don't know who Wally Pipp is, Wally Pipp is the guy that was replaced by, I want to say, Lou Gehrig, if I got that correct, if I know my baseball history. So yeah, and like Wally Pipp, you don't really hear about, but Lou Gehrig, Iron Man, the Iron Horse, Yankee legend, so Magic, or Norm Nixon is Wally Pipp in this scenario. And nobody wants to be Wally Pipp. Like, Norm Nixon in the show, there's a scene in there where he's at a nail salon, which is, crazy to think about. But hey, LA, you know what I'm saying? You want to be fly, presentable, all that good stuff. He's in there talking with like the girls in the shop, which is even more like, if this had happened today, it'd be, somebody getting their hair cut in the barbershop, and their entourage would be like 20 dudes in the barbershop, whatever, all kissing his ass. But these girls was like, hey, they said Magic is the next blah, blah, blah. And like girls out there giving his stats. I'm like, damn, they are clowning this man in this shop. It's not like he's already there just trying to get his nails did, chilling, all that good stuff. And, I just thought it was funny. But Norm wasn't having any of it. Like, and who could blame him? I mean, nobody wants to be replacing a job, especially by somebody who's, 19 years old at the time, and unproven at the time. But to me, the main takeaway from this show, and it's not, to me, it's not the takeaway, but personally, my takeaway from this show is that, like anything in life, but especially in sports, fortune and despair, it is a super thin line between the two of them. Like, you go this way, something good could happen. You go that way, something bad could happen. Chicago wins the coin flip. Maybe they draft Magic, maybe they don't. The Lakers, Jerry West, and I didn't even know this until I watched the show. Jerry West wanted to draft Sidney Moncrief. Now, God bless Sidney Moncrief. I'm sure he is a swell fellow. And he played his ass off for the Bucks when he played for Milwaukee. And he was a very good NBA player. I believe he was an all-star a couple times. But, Magic Johnson has his own line of theaters. So, Magic, he's just an icon. But in this television show, the man who steals this episode is Jason Clarke, who if you've seen movies like Zero Dark 30, White House Down, Public Enemies, anything like that, he's been in that. And when I first saw him in Zero Dark 30, he's a very tall dude. Like, he looks like he's 6'5". He looks like he could play Jerry West. And in this show, he does. He plays Jerry West. But he plays him like, this man is like the most cantankerous person alive. Like, and it's funny to me because, again, I didn't read Jeff's book, but I didn't know Jerry West got down like this, man. Like, I didn't know I don't think Jerry West could have played in the 90s or even in the 2000s, and especially after, like, social media became a thing, because he probably would have been whooping people's asses, like, in real life. But, yeah, Jerry West, he, and Dr. Jerry Buss in the show explains this. He's like, yeah, Jerry, he was the man in LA, back when they were good. He helped lead the Lakers to the finals 5 years in a row against the Celtics, and the Lakers beat them 5 years in a row. Shout out to my man Vic Mackey, Michael Chiklis. He's playing Red Auerbach in this television show. I love The Shield. It is a great show. I want to see how plays Red Auerbach, because Dr. Jerry and Red Auerbach are going to meet in this not episode, but in this television show, and it should be pretty good. So, but anyway, I didn't know that Jerry West kind of saw himself as like, I don't know, like they gave him the MVP for losing in the finals, and that I'm sure that does something to you. Like, I'm not the most competitive person, but I still would be like, damn, like, MVP or something, I lost. Jerry West, to get to where he is, or to where he was at that point, I'm sure is like super duper competitive. So he was like, oh man, they give me a fucking trophy for losing. And like, he just goes into this whole diatribe. And it's just so funny because, I don't know, like, to me, I could watch 3 more episodes of just Jerry West by himself, but you see these guys and they're pro athletes, and you don't know like how fragile they are. I'm not saying that Jerry West is super fragile. I just think that like what he did in his playing career, I'm sure he got looked at as like, he's the guy that couldn't lead the Lakers to a championship. He couldn't get over the Celtics. Just like, Mike had to get past the, I was about to say Bulls, what the hell? Mike couldn't get past the Pistons. The Lakers at the time couldn't get past the Celtics. The Pistons couldn't get past the Celtics when Isaiah was playing for the Pistons. LeBron couldn't get past the Celtics. In the NBA, there's always this team that's like, down the block that you're like, we have to beat them if we want to win a championship. I mean, it's like that in all sports. So, but Jerry, he goes into it like, yeah, I had to be on the floor with those motherfuckers, and like, it's just great, man. Like, it's great seeing an NBA Hall of Famer. I mean, the man is the logo of the NBA, if you're not familiar. Like, when they talk about the logo and all that, like, he's who they're talking about. His silhouette is the logo for the National Basketball Association. And I don't think he could care less. Like, he was like, it's just a point that just made me like almost cry. It was so funny. Because he was just like, man, like, I don't want to be the logo. Like, he would rather have a championship, pretty much. I don't want to spoil the whole thing because it made me laugh so hard. But it was just, I don't know, like, the man was fiery. I mean, he broke clubs at the golf course. He threw his MVP trophy out the window after they drafted Magic. For some reason, again, he was the one that wanted Sidney Moncrief, which is just insane to me. He didn't like Magic because he was too tall for a point guard. He thought that he was too slow. He thought that he smiled too much and he was too soft, which, looking back on it, like, again, how this stuff could just flip on a dime, like people's egos and insecurities and all of that type of stuff. And it's also like Jerry West was the guy that traded for Kobe Bryant, traded right out of high school. So maybe, I don't know, maybe this kind of feeds into why he traded for Kobe. Like, maybe he saw like, man, I don't want to be the guy, like, I was about to not draft Magic. I don't want to be the guy that was about to not draft Magic and didn't draft Kobe or couldn't get Kobe when I needed him. So, but yeah, he was the one that helped orchestrate that trade to trade Vlade Divac to Charlotte and get Kobe to come to LA. And I want to say he was also the guy that traded for Powell, if I'm not mistaken. If my sister was here, she'd be able to, she'd go boom, boom, boom. I mean, she's a Lakers fan as much as I'm a Bulls fan, especially like the 2000 Lakers. So she'd be all over it. But anyway. It was hilarious. Like, it's just, I like seeing it. I like seeing the human side of athletes, and this show portrays that because, again, Jeff Pearlman, he doesn't, pull his punches in any type of book that he writes. So, I want to see how well, like, how in depth they go into it. Like, are they going to show, you hear about these infamous parties at the Forum Club where it's like, Magic is like picking girls out the stands to meet him at the, back at the joint so they could do whatever. And like Dr. Jerry Buss will be there. And I don't know how much in depth they're going to go into it, but I'm really interested to see if they do, if at all. Again, I'm a sports junkie, basketball junkie, so I could watch like 5 seasons of this. I mean, they could go like on a Sopranos Wire type run, and I'd be all for it. Like, if they chop it up and be like, okay, this season they win the championship, this is the season that they lose, and Magic has a terrible finals and all this type of stuff. He gets, well, not gets, but he kind of like, wants a new coach instead of Paul Westhead or whatever. Yeah, like I would do like 10 seasons of this thing, and like, I would have them lose to Mike and the Bulls, but I'm a Bulls fan, so um, so yeah, man. The next episode is gonna be directed by Jonah Hill, which is gonna be interesting. I know they're homeboys, him and Adam McKay, because I don't think Adam McKay did super bad, but anyway, like I'm sure it'll be a pretty good episode. I mean, all the casting is like picture perfect to me. Kareem, not that anybody's gonna look exactly like Kareem playing in his heyday, but I think Solomon Hughes, if I'm not mistaken, I think he does a great job as playing that Kareem that is just getting to LA and kind of is like, I'm Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I'm not Lou Alcindor anymore. I don't think it was too far after that where he changed his name. And I think it's also something to be said to where, as like a black athlete, especially growing up in that time, I mean, Kareem, he I'm sure he watched, what Bill Russell went through, what Muhammad Ali went through, Jim Brown, being a famous, successful black athlete in the time where, it's people didn't even really want you to be black. So, he kind of had to put this, him and, Bill Russell, they get this rap for being like standoffish with the media. I don't see how you can give Bill Russell any grief about being standoffish with the media. The man was a black man playing in Boston in like the 50s and 60s. Like if he ever smiled, it would have been, a joyous occasion. Cause I mean, Boston is tough, man. Like Boston is tough back then. But anyway, Kareem, he knows that, or he knew, and I'm sure he knows now that he had to kind of put this shell around himself to like keep people who were trying to, race bait him into like being the angry black guy. And he also had to be able to stand up for himself and speak out when stuff is, when he sees stuff messed up. To this day, he's doing it. I mean, he was not even clowning, but like, because you don't need to clown John Stockton with this, but he was talking about how John Stockton was spouting all this irresponsible stuff about the vaccine, which he was. I mean, he was just talking about like how John Stockton, you're talking about how like athletes were dying in high school and all that kind of stuff, which never hadn't heard that. Knock on wood. Hopefully it doesn't happen anytime soon. I'm a cousin who plays football, and I didn't hear anything about anybody passing away or anything like that, COVID or otherwise. So let me knock on wood again and keep it moving. So no, I like Kareem was out there like John Stockton is being irresponsible, and he's pretty much somebody who, or Kareem I'm talking about, has common sense enough to be like, to stand up and to speak out when when he doesn't think things are going right. I'm not saying, you got to agree with him 100%. I don't think anyone should agree with anyone 100%, but part of, being human and growing up and being an adult is to hear somebody's point of view, and whether you disagree or agree with them, to be like, okay, that's your point of view. That's cool. Like, we don't have to hate each other. Like, now if you're, obviously there's extremes to everything. So if you're talking, racial stuff or, homophobic stuff or something like that, then, that's, I don't know how, to each their own as to how cool you can be with that person. But, I don't know. It's just, I don't even know where I was going with that. But no, it's as part of being a actual human is to not have to agree with everybody 100% of the time. So there's people watching this who I am sure you won't agree with me 100% of the time. I'm an Aquarius, and a lot of times we're weird and out there, and a lot of our opinions and views are looked upon as being different. So I'm sure it won't happen. You guys won't see that, or you guys won't agree with me all the time. But I do like how, again, Jeff not pulling any punches in his book. He kind of, or he showed this part where it starts off with Kareem filming the movie Airplane, which is a old movie, a funny movie too. And it's funny, after they shoot a scene, one of the guys in one of the producers are off camera, and they're like, "Yeah, you should have got OJ for this," because OJ was like the actor athlete that you get to put in something funny at the time. But Kareem, I think he held his own. Like the scene where it's that famous scene where the little white kid is like, and I'm only calling him white because of A, he is white, and B, I'm gonna get into the second part of the story, but the kid is like, yeah, Kareem, my dad says that, well, first of all, he's like, hey, aren't you Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? He's like, no, I'm, the pilot in the movie, whatever. Roger Murdoch, that's who he played in the movie. He's like, no, you're Kareem, and my dad said that, you aren't good, or blah, 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 or you take plays off or whatever. And then finally Kareem gets fed up when he's like, look, kid, you tell your dad to, go against Bob Lanier and Bill Walton every night and that type of thing. So I thought, to me, that's my favorite part of that movie is when he just like breaks character and he's like, hey, look, I am Kareem, now shut up. But after that, after everybody says cut, the little white kid comes up to Kareem and he's like, yeah, Kareem, like, I'm really a fan of yours. Like, I meant that. Like, can I get your autograph? And at the time, Kareem, he wasn't playing the radio with a lot of white people, young or old. So he was like, I think his girlfriend was, I don't think she was black, but she was fair skinned, whatever. Yeah, the kid is like, let me get your autograph or whatever. And Kareem tells him to fuck off. And he tells him that, and then the scene ends, it cuts to something else. Me personally, I was like, damn, I wonder what happened after that. But that's just like, after, what happens after that scene. I was just curious. Yeah, Jack Kid Cook, he didn't want Magic, or he was like playing like he didn't want him. Jerry West didn't want Magic. He definitely didn't want him. Norm Nixon didn't want Magic because he was coming to take his spot. Yeah, like a lot of people didn't want him, but Magic, he was kind of like coming out of that, BMOC place on Michigan State's campus, being the national championship winner, being the most outstanding person in the tournament. Magic, and I like how Quincy, I think that's his name, I like how he plays Magic, because he plays him as like, he's a 19-year-old kid where like, he's not a asshole jock to where he's like, yeah, can't nobody touch me, blah, 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 blah. He's like, look, I'm back at the crib, mom, dad. He's very respectful to his parents. He's very, he's like, oh, man, dad, he don't want his dad to work as hard as he does, just not because he's ungrateful, but because he doesn't want to see his dad, in a stressful situation anymore, which I could, as a son, I could totally get. He wants to do right by his folks. And, he comes off as very humble. But there's also this side of him to where he's like, but I know how good I am. Like, I just won a national championship. I beat Larry Bird, who was like, everybody's favorite, white basketball player at the time. He's getting paid this amount. I feel like I should be paid this amount of money. And again, I beat the man who, the Celtics are giving a boatload of money to at the time. So, show me some love. Like, I'm Magic Johnson. Like, everybody loves Magic. So I think Quincy, is a wonderful dichotomy of being humble and also knowing that you're the shit because you're Magic Johnson and you're very talented. So I like how when Norm Nixon kind of clowns him at this little charity get-together or whatever, after he takes the fox mink off, Magic goes back to his hotel room and, he's not Magic Johnson, the icon that we see today where he's, just a larger-than-life person. He goes back to his hotel room and he's like a defeated 19-year-old kid that had to go up against an NBA veteran, and he got clowned in front of like a whole bunch of people who'll probably be kissing his ass, in a year or so. So, his dad sees him moping around. He's like, look, man, we didn't come out here just, we didn't come out in this fun and sun and all this just to have you, be down on yourself just because of whatever. And Magic is like, look, I just don't want to be the tallest garbage man in Lansing. What if I'm not good enough? That was probably like the last time Magic Johnson ever doubted himself. So yeah, and his dad, rightly takes offense to it. Like, I can see why he would, because he's a garbage man. And that's how he pretty much put Magic had siblings. Like, they show a scene in the house where it's like nothing but Magic and his brothers and sisters. I forgot how many he had, but he had a lot. But yeah, he had to, raise some children. So, he kind of takes offense to it, but then he's like, I would have never thought that we would be here and you would be in this position. So, you should take advantage of it. But no, not even that. He's like, no, whatever you feel is right. So, he's not a stage dad where he's like, look, man, I need you to Like, bro, I'm tired of working. Like, he's not forcing his kid to do this. He really reminded me of my own father. Like, he wanted his son to make his own decisions. Magic was going to go back to Michigan State and, finish his career there or come out his junior year. And then they do the whole, probably how like most colleges recruit athletes, like the whole, go into the stadium, here's your jersey with your name on it, blah, 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 blah. Imagine all these fans, all this type of stuff. So they pretty much sell him on being a Laker, and he ends up being a Laker. But it's just, I don't know, it's just so crazy to see how like all this stuff could just be just flipped on a dime just because Jack Kid Cook, he was about to not sell the team to Dr. Jerry Buss because Cook was so spiteful towards his ex-wife. Like, man, I don't know, like he was just super spiteful. Now, 3 sides to every story, but I don't think the man had to be that spiteful about it, but he was not a nice person I think he looked down on females, minorities, he was just not a cool dude. I'll just put it that way. And which is such a great contrast to Dr. Jerry Buss, because he was like the coolest dude ever. From hearing people talk about him, hearing Magic talk about him, how much he revered him, just how down home he was. And oh, by the way, he's like this, millionaire playboy who, got with a lot of Playboy bunnies, like living in LA, putting, girls through college and all this type of stuff. And he was just that guy, like I could watch a documentary just about him and how he made his fortune. I didn't know what he was a doctor of until I saw this. And he was like, he was a doctor of like, something to do with like helping, America either make weapons or buy weapons or whatever. He was like, I didn't want to destroy stuff anymore. I wanted to build something. So, and he ended up doing that. But there was a point where, what if Cook was like, yeah, I don't want to sell you the Lakers. What the hell? I don't want to sell you the Lakers. So, get out of here. But Dr. Jerry Buss, he didn't get to this point in his life by being scared and not betting on himself. And, forgive the expression, by not putting his nuts on the table. And that's what he did. When he went to the dinner with Jack Kid Cook, he was like, look, this is what it is. If you don't want to sell me the team, that's fine. I'll be up Schitt's Creek. But what are you going to do? Are you going to find another buyer who wants to buy this franchise in a league nobody wants to watch? Like, and I'm up here like giving you the money right here, right now. So I don't know. It's just one of them things where, and I'm sure it goes on today. Like in every professional league, I'm sure there's a lot of like old rich guys. I'll just say that, old rich guys who do not like being told what to do and who do not like losing. So not even on the court or whatever, because a lot of them, it don't even seem like they care about losing on the court or the field or the diamond. It seems like a lot of them care about losing like in public and losing face, as my Japanese brothers would say. So, so they're not big on losing, or being told what to do with their money. But I do like how they were just able to, they had to show this guy, they had to show Jack Kid Cook and how he sold the Lakers or whatever, but I'm glad he had his one episode and we could just shove him off to the side and y'all could bring in, Pat Riley, Michael Cooper, not Diana Ross. Who was that singer? Maybe it was Diana Ross. It was some other singer Paula Abdul, obviously, because she got her start as a Laker girl. So, they're going to have somebody play her. Apparently, they're going to have my man Mike Epps actually playing Richard Pryor, which is going to be, I'm hoping it's going to be hilarious. There was this talk of he was going to be Richard Pryor in the movie, in the biopic, in the same way that Jamie Foxx played Ray and all of that good stuff. So I hope they give him a lot of dialogue, and I hope he gets to just shine. Like, to me, Jerry West stole this episode because he was just so funny to me, just like being so angry. Like, and I can relate to that, man. Like, the man busted his ass for the Lakers, and he works for the Lakers now, but I'm sure he knows how he was perceived at that time. This wasn't, executive of the year Jerry West. This was, I won a, NBA Finals MVP for being the losing team, Jerry West, and he had a huge chip on his shoulder. Like, he was not playing the radio when it came to how he was going to be perceived. So, again, flip a coin. Like a lot of stuff in life, like just stuff could just turn on a dime, and there's a thin line between everything. But I'm very anxious to see where this television show goes after this. Again, they can make 20 seasons of this thing, and I would watch it if Adam McKay is behind it and is being shot. I mean, and there's a lot of like breaking the fourth wall stuff, but to me, I mean, that type of stuff is done in movies anyway. So, what, and it kind of adds to the lightness of the show, because I'm sure there's going to be some dark points in the show as well. So, but all in all, a great show. I recommend you checking it out if you have HBO Max. It comes on every Sunday. If you don't have HBO Max, just borrow it from your friend. Get their password and watch it, because it's worth the watch, definitely. But I'm ending it here on this, man. I don't know how often I'm going to do these shows on the Sophomore Show, how often a week. But I'm going to try to have content loaded up for you guys on YouTube. Again, I don't care if one person watches this or 1 million people watch this. Thank you very much for watching this show. I really appreciate it. Because at the very least, I'm not making $1 million, but I'm able to speak, give my opinion on stuff that's out in the world, whether it be sports or pop culture, and you're listening to it. And you don't have to agree with what I'm saying, but hopefully you're taking in what I am saying, and maybe you have a different perspective on it that you could go ahead and let me know about down in the comments. I'm very much a part of having different voices in the room and just hearing people's different takes on stuff. So, but yeah, thank you very much, man. This has been your boy Jimmy Guapo, the very first episode of the Sophomore Show. Many more to come. Y'all have a lovely Monday.